Howdy, howdy, howdy. It's Domain and Range Part 1. So now, in your composition book, you should have this graphic organizer already glued in. And we're going to talk about what all of this stands for. When you're talking about relations, you can find something called the domain and range. And so this organizer is to help us keep it all straight, okay? So if you think about an XY table, this is going to be your X's and this is going to be your Y's. Your X value can be called your domain. It can be called your input, and it is also your X coordinate. And a definition for domain is the domain of a relation is the set of all inputs or in other words, X coordinates. Now your Y, this can be called your range. It can also be referred to as your output, and it can also be referred to as your Y coordinates. So those are three different words for Y, your Y in coordinates. So the definition is the range of a relation is the set of all outputs, or in other words, Y coordinates. So now, underneath that graphic organizer, you can write these examples. Example 1, we have ordered pairs 0, 3, 2, 9, negative 3, 5, 0, 2, and 1, 1. If I asked you, is this a function? That means we have to look at our X values. We have 0, 2, negative 3, 0, and 1. Is this a function? Well, if we have an X value that repeats, it is not a function. So this is no. Now, if they want us to write the domain, the way that we write the domain is we put the fancy braces. I'm not doing a very good job of writing those today. And then we put all of the X values in numerical order. And then if there are any that are repeating, we don't write them twice, we only write them once. So when I look here, the lowest number I see in my X values is negative 3. And then I see 0. Next I see 1. And then I see 2. So our domain is negative 3, 0, 1, and 2. Again, it's in numerical order, and we do not repeat any repeating numbers. Our range, when we look at our range, we have 3, 9, 5, 2, and 1. So our lowest is 1, then we have 2, then 3, then 5, and 9. This is how we would write the domain and range when we are given ordered pairs. Okay, example 2, we have a mapping diagram. We have our input and our output. And one thing that can help you is if you actually write out your ordered pairs. So here I see that one of my ordered pairs is 1, 1. Then I have an ordered pair of 2, 0. Then we have 3, -3, and then we have 4, 1. When we look at this, is this a function? Yes, it is, because we have no repeating x values. Then we have to write our domain. Our domain, remember, is our x values or our inputs. So if we look there, our inputs are already written for us. All we have to do is write them down in numerical order. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now if we look at our mapping diagram for our range, we already have it, -3, 0, and 1. Example 3 comes from an input-output table. First, is this a function? Look at your x values. Do you have any repeating x values? Yes, we have repeating x values, so therefore, no, this is not a function. Now we've got to write our domain. Our domain again is our x values or our inputs. So our domain, remember, we go in numerical order, so we would have a -3, 0, and 2. Remember, we do not repeat numbers. Then in our range, that's our y values, we're going to have 2, 3, 5, and 9. Okay, we're going to do one last example here. If you were given a coordinate plane with points plotted on it, the first thing that I would do with this is I would write out my ordered pairs. So look at point A. Point A is located at 0, 4. Point B is located at 4, 2. Point C is located at 1, 1.5, or 1 5/10. Point D is located at -2, 2. Point E is located at -2, -4. And point F is located at 5, -4. So, first thing we do is determine whether or not this is a function. On a graph, we can write out all the points and look to see if there are any repeating x values, or we can do the vertical line test. So if we draw a line where we have points, we need to see if it ever crosses 2 points when we draw a vertical line. And you see here it crosses point E and point D when you do a vertical line there. So therefore, this is not a function because it failed the vertical line test, or you could say because it has repeating inputs or repeating x values. Okay. Now we've got to write our domain. So again, we do our fancy braces, and I look there and the lowest value I see for our x values is -2. Then I see 0. Next I see 1, and then is 4 and 5. So this would be our domain. Next we got to go to our range. So we look at our y values. The lowest y value I see is -4. After -4, I see 1.5 or 1 5/10. Next, I see 2, and then I also see 4. In here, -4 was repeated, and 2 was also repeated, but again, we only write it one time. Tomorrow we're going to practice determining whether it's a function or not, and writing the domain and range from different representations. Have a good one.